Okay, we've just got people coming in now. I'm admitting them as they turn up. Morning, everybody. We just admit folks into the room.
Morning, everyone.
Give us a minute and then we will begin the session. Just note, I'll mute all of the attendees essentially, and then people can come off mute, at which point, you're sort of doing questions, comments, feedback, and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, we get some interesting feedback in the room. I think we're sort of doing okay as a start, and then I'll just keep admitting people. So we might say, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Teaching Academy and Library combined event. This morning's PD session is looking at enhancing student information and AI literacy. And we're very grateful to have Beck Fabry, Jane Boland, Lorraine Rose presenting this morning. As I'm certainly not a go-to in anything AI at the moment, I need all the information I can get. So I'm grateful that they've come along to share their knowledge. And with that, I will hand over to Beck and team. Thank you all.
Thanks, Lachlan, and good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for coming along to our session today on enhancing student information and AI literacy. We're going to be looking at library support and resources in this space today. My name is Beck Fabry, and I manage the learning and teaching support provided by the library. And I'm joined today by my colleagues and co-presenters, Lorraine Rose, our faculty librarian, and Jane Boland, our copyright and open content librarian. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we live and work together. We pay respect to elders within First Nations communities and acknowledge the continuity of cultures, languages, leadership and knowledge systems. And we extend that respect to all First Nations people joining us today. So just a quick look at what we're going to do in today's workshop. We're going to first quickly just look at the growing importance of AI literacy and discuss how we see AI literacy as an extension of information and digital literacy. We'll highlight the library's resources and support services for developing both students' information and AI literacy skills. And we'll show how these can be accessed and integrated into subject sites as well. We're also going to explore some AI instructional content that the library might include in classes and look at AI use and copyright considerations for students as well. So our presentation will probably only go for like 30, 40 minutes today, so there should be plenty of time for questions, but feel free to ask throughout as well. You can pop questions in the chat or turn your microphones on, that's fine. All right, just to get started, just a little bit of background information, just to provide some context and explain the rationale behind our approach to integrating AI and information literacy instruction. So academic libraries, including us here at Charles Sturt, have traditionally supported students in developing information and digital literacy skills. As students' needs evolve, particularly with the rapid growth of AI technologies, there's a need now for libraries to adapt these existing services to encompass AI literacy support as well. Generative AI tools, as we're all very aware, introduce new challenges to the information landscape, including misinformation, biases, and ethical complexities, which makes AI literacy a really essential skill for our students today. What was clear to us here in the library from early on was that key AI literacy competencies actually align really closely with existing information and digital literacy skills. And these competencies include things like critical thinking, which is needed to analyze AI tools and AI-generated content, evaluation skills, which are needed to assess information reliability and identify potential biases, and ethical awareness, which is needed to ensure responsible use of AI and to uphold academic integrity, of course. So to more clearly define these competencies, we work to analyse and map AI literacy skills against existing frameworks, including the Australian and New Zealand Information Literacy Framework. And that visual you can see on the screen there just illustrates how those AI literacy competencies align and actually complement existing information literacy standards. So we can see that they're very closely aligned. The key difference is in how they are applied in different contexts. So we see our role as helping students develop these skills and understand how they apply across both traditional and AI-generated information. To achieve this, we aim to teach core competencies like critical thinking, evaluation, ethical awareness as transferable skills that remain relevant as technology evolves. We also aim to encourage lateral thinking, enabling students to apply these skills flexibly to navigate the evolving digital landscape, and support adaptability of students as well, so that they feel confident in navigating both current and emerging digital environments. The main goal being to help students develop integrated critical skills rather than learning them in isolation, to equip them with the comprehensive skill sets needed to critically engage with both traditional and AI-generated information. So when determining what to include in library instruction around these literacies, we also considered how these skills should be taught. And informed by research showing that students actually prefer information literacy instruction via online multimedia-based learning, we've taken a digital-first approach. Our aim being to develop a sustainable, scalable and scaffolded model, one that meets students where they are, with content that they can engage with flexibly and independently. And we've used a range of different platforms and approaches to create a range of resources which are tailored to diverse learning needs. So I've just got some information on the PowerPoint there about those resources, and there are links to those resources in the PowerPoint too. And I'll pop that PowerPoint in the chat in just a moment, so you've got access to those. First up, we've got our generative AI guide, which is that sort of quick reference information, and that includes information for study, for teaching, and for research as well. We then have our digital skills modules, and these are flexible, self-paced modules which cover really comprehensive competencies in information, digital, and AI literacy. And those modules include topics like artificial intelligence and security and safety online. We then have our Using AI Tools at University Open Educational Resource. This is a resource created by our librarians here at Charles Sturt, which is focused on the ethical and effective use of AI in academia. And it's targeted primarily at experienced students, researchers, and academic or teaching staff. We then have our InfoQuest, Information and AI Skills Brightspace module. So this is a fairly recently developed resource. It's designed to help students develop essential, comprehensive, foundational search, evaluation, and ethical AI use skills. And this module is accessible through the Library Learning Hub, which is a discoverable or self-enroll site within Brightspace. All that content can be added to individual subject sites as well. And of course, these resources are complemented by that personalised or tailored support that can be really crucial for some students, including one-on-one consultations via our online appointments or drop-ins to the campus library and our phone and live chat service as well. We also do provide some tailored live classes too. So while we acknowledge that live classes are generally not the preferred delivery method for this type of content, they may still be useful and helpful in subjects that involve complex AI-based assessments. And in just a moment, Lorraine's going to demonstrate some of the content that might be included in those tailored AI classes. So I'm going to pop out of this PowerPoint now and go over to the library website and just show you what some of those resources look like and how they can be accessed. Okay, so we're on the library website now. I'm just going to go over to our library guides. And as I mentioned, there's links to these resources in the PowerPoint, so you don't have to remember the path. And we're going to go into the generative AI guide. And as mentioned, this is sort of that quick reference information, and it's for students, it's for researchers, and it's for academic staff as well. I would call this probably our source of truth. This is where you can link off to all of those other resources that I mentioned earlier. So we can link off here to our Digital Skills Artificial Intelligence module. I'll just open that up for you and show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is one of the modules in the Digital Skills series, and this one is dedicated to artificial intelligence, and it's a self-paced resource developed for students to work through as they need, and it includes lots of interactive components. I'll just go in and show you what it looks like. And you can see it's set up there with information about what's included in the module, how long it will take to complete, etc. And it provides fairly comprehensive information and lots of interactive elements as well. Go back to the Generative AI guide now, and I'll open up the Using AI Tools at University Open Educational Resource. And you can see this sits on the same platform as the digital skills modules. This is the Pressbooks platform that the library provides access to for the development of open textbooks, but it also lends itself to modular content as well. So the Using AI Tools at University resource was developed for the more experienced students, for researchers, and for academic staff as well. And you can see it includes lots of really comprehensive information, including information there about developing prompts and how to present outputs created by AI as well. Back to the Gen AI guide, and I'll flip over to the For Teaching page. And here you can see more information about those digital skills modules. And if you were to follow that link, you could see information on the library website about each of the modules there, and then link off to those. And this is content that can be integrated into Brightspace subject sites as well. That's one of the really nice things about the Pressbooks platform. And back to the For Teaching site, and we'll go in and have a look at InfoQuest. So you can see here that you can link to it in the Library Learning Hub. As I mentioned, that is a self-enroll or discoverable site within Brightspace. Just got to move my tools bar there. And that opens up within Brightspace. You do have to enroll the first time you access, but after that, you can access directly. I'll go in and have a look at the content in that subject. And I'm logged in as a student at the moment, so we can see this, how students would see the content. I'll just open that up. I'll expand the menu there, and you can see there's really comprehensive information included in this module or set of modules. So it covers off on that traditional information literacy content, taking students through the research process, showing them how and where to search, and also how to evaluate information they find. But it also has some AI literacy content woven throughout. For instance, on the Discover Search Tools page, does take a little while to load when sharing the screen, sorry. So on the search tool page, we've incorporated information about traditional information search tools like our Catalogue, Primo Search, and journal databases, and also some information about AI tools and how you would evaluate or assess those to see if they are appropriate to use. And in addition, we have a dedicated artificial intelligence module within this set as well. If I go in and have a look at that content, you can see we're quite careful about providing lots of information for students to ensure they check that they are allowed to use AI within their particular subject, because we know that that's not allowed in all subjects at the moment. And then we've got information about what AI is, the ethical use of AI, information about particular AI prompts and tools. And although there looks like there's a lot of pages within this resource, the content is not really heavy in nature. It's supposed to be sort of very quick resource for students to work through. And that's all I wanted to show about the content there. If you're interested in having another look, go and explore, or you can get in contact with us here in the library, and we'll talk about how that can be accessed by students or how it can be integrated within Brightspace subject sites as well. Are there any questions? Liz, you got your hand up?
Oh, hi, yeah, thanks, Beck. Yeah, just a question about what you mentioned just then, actually. If we're working with academics who might want to incorporate some of this into their own subject sites, can they just kind of pick it up and plonk it in, or should they be talking to you first?
It's probably best that they talk to the library.
Yep.
If they wanted to just link off to the Library Learning Hub so students can access that content themselves, absolutely,
do that, yeah.
no problem doing that.
Yeah,
And
okay.
there's instructions in the Generative AI guide on how to sort of direct students to access their content as well. So if
Yep.
they follow those steps, they'll be able to access that content. The other content, the digital skills content, again, that can be linked to. So it sits, out on the library website and in our Pressbooks platform, which is open. So
Yep.
it can just be linked to, or it can actually be added as a topic area within a Brightspace subject site.
Yeah, alrighty. Great, thank you.
InfoQuest is the same. It can be added as another topic area as well.
Thank you.
Lachlan.
Thank you. Great collection of resources and things, and I love the fact that you organised them in such a cohesive way this morning for us to see. The comment that I put in the chat before, and this ties into what Liz was talking about potentially, was, to me at least, it kind of makes sense potentially to maybe organise this into a module type package, etc., that we could put into master sites. Potentially for all subjects at that point, and then it would just be available for students. Otherwise, obviously the scope of ability for all of our different staff at being able to link to resources and make it not look horrendous is varies greatly. So you might get some with great EDs and LROs and others for the time being that can help them organize those things. Otherwise, I'm sure you guys could do a much better job of organizing them the way they're intended to be organized. Just a thought.
No, that's an excellent suggestion. InfoQuest is the content that's where we've put everything to organize into those modules, and it's actually in the Learning Object repository in Brightspace now. So yeah, having it in master sites would be amazing, and then just teaching staff don't even have to think about it. It would just flow through. We're sort of establishing at the moment what sort of level that content is best directed at. It's fairly foundational. So sort of 100 or 200 level subjects, that content is quite appropriate for, but could be useful for all students.
Yeah, and I can see Daniel's got a question there about policy and things, so I'll hand over to him in a second. But it does, I suppose, there are maybe some considerations about providing the information in the sites if the site doesn't explicitly say you can or can't use it. There's potential, I'm not going to say conflict of interest, but maybe that might lead to some confusion until that's engaged with. So
for sure, and that's probably one of the reasons we're still providing like different options. We've still got a lot of information literacy content that does not include AI literacy content, because we're very aware that that's not the standard, that's not the guidelines that the university promotes at the moment. So it's only within, the content is really only relevant for particular subjects at the moment, I suppose, but to allow the use of AI within particular assessment tasks.
Thank you.
Is there another question? Yeah, the question about the university policy. It is, I think at the moment, at the discretion of the subject convener, I believe. It's interesting to see what's happening in other institutions around Australia. Some of them are opening that up, but at the moment at CSU, I believe it is still AI use, AI tool use, generative AI use is not permitted unless explicitly stated within a subject outline by the subject convener. Are there any other questions? We do have links actually in the guide out to that information. So if I go back to this for study page, I think it's the Your Guide to Artificial Intelligence would take you to the university's current guidelines for students. Okay, I might hand over to Lorraine now, who's going to demonstrate some of the content that would be included in those tailored AI literacy classes that I mentioned. So I'll stop sharing and hand over to Lorraine. Thank you.
Beck, I'll just share my screen. So I'm just going to show you what type of content we could include in an AI literacy class or a recording for a subject. And this is just an example. We'd obviously tailor it for the subject depending on the extent they could use AI and which AI tools they're allowed to use. So we would at the library start off, well, we'd cover a couple of different things. We'd explain what Gen AI is, and then we'd go through responsible and ethical use and creating prompts and then some demos. But I'll just show you a couple of the slides that we'd use for an AI literacy class. So I think it's really important to start off with explaining to students what is Gen AI and how it's been developed, because by understanding the background to it all, we can then get a better understanding of the limitations and the risks in using these systems. So there would be a bit of background on that. And then we'd go through all the how to use AI tools responsibly. And this can include things like talking about hallucinations, so those false references that large language models are now pretty well known to produce, but also the biases that's involved in the outputs, the accuracy and the misinformation that might also appear in the outputs. So by covering all these sort of risks and limitations to the AI tools, we would hope then that students would build an understanding of when they're using the tools, they need to check things, or if they're using one tool over another, say one large language model over another large language model, what's the differences between them, how are they working differently? So trying to just get that little bit of understanding about AI systems. Then we would go into creating prompts, and really this is very much in the same way that we would teach how to use Boolean operators in database searching. So we'd go through a lot of tips on how to create those textual inputs that we need to give the AI systems, those instructions. And there's quite a few different ways we can create different prompts, different things we can use. And we talk about all of those in light of then the students hopefully choosing some different techniques that they could take forward and be able to create good prompts to then be able to create great outputs from the system. And then after we go through all the prompt building, I'd then show an example of how to use Copilot. And so we might have an example essay like this one, and maybe the students say in this case, they're allowed to use Copilot for understanding a topic. So maybe Googling some key concepts, but then they could also maybe use Copilot to draft up some key points of an essay, so an essay outline, or maybe they could use Copilot to find some key resources. So depending on what they're allowed to use Copilot for, it might just be brainstorming, or it might be more than that. We would tailor the workshop to suit that. But to demonstrate Copilot to the students, I'd take them to the Microsoft Edge browser and they'd open up a new tab, and then I'd show them the Open Copilot button that's at the end of the search panel here. And if they click that, it opens up Copilot in the Microsoft Edge browser. Then we'd be instructing them to make sure they log in. And I'm already logged in now, but for students, there should be a sign in button in the top right corner, which they'll click, and then they need to use their Charles Sturt credential. So their email address that is on file with Charles Sturt is the one they would put in, and then that would take them to a CSU login page where they can log in with their Charles Sturt credentials. This then means they are then logged into the enterprise version of Copilot, which has data protection. And I can see I'm logged in because if I hover my mouse over this little green icon, it tells me I'm in the enterprise data protection version. What this means for students is they won't have any of the data they put into Copilot used for training Copilot in the future. And by understanding how these systems work, students should now understand why that's important, because we've explained that for initially in the lesson. And it also means that we'd still say don't put any private or personal information in these systems, but it just means they've got that extra layer of protection where they know that whatever they put in isn't going to be used in the future by any of these AIs. So then we just demonstrate some prompts. So from all the instructions on how to create great prompts, we'd use some of those techniques in our prompts. So for this prompt here, I'm telling the AI that it's going to be a first-year university student. So that's the level I need the content produced at. And I'm asking what I want it to give me. And then I'm telling it I want an outline of the key ideas. And I'm also telling it that I want it in short sentences and for it to be concise. So this is something we'd show the students how to get some really simplified information out of Copilot. At this point too, we're always stressing you need to check this information. Is it accurate? Cross-check it with other sources. We could then also show them a prompt about how they could create an outline for an essay. So once again, we're saying act as a university student, and we're giving Copilot in this case what we want covered in the essay. So there has to be a bit of research here about the topics that we want covered. And then we'll ask Copilot to organise the information. How will we organise that essay? Then finally, another way we might provide a prompt for students that students might need to use is to find some resources. So this prompt is asking Copilot to find 5 peer-reviewed articles about the use of vaccinations in infectious disease, and I've asked it to create it as a table, and I've also wanted it to provide links. I've done that for a couple of reasons. One is it could produce hallucinations, so those false references. So if it provides a link, I can click that link and check that the article does exist. But at this point, showing the students something like this, we can also recommend that one, they go and check that these articles actually exist, and we would say go back into Primo Search, check that they exist in Primo Search. So we're highlighting the library's resources, and we'd also say, well, you need to check that they're peer reviewed, and then we could show them the resources we use to check if articles are peer reviewed as well, because we don't know if these are peer reviewed or not based on what Copilot's provided us. So a couple of demos there we'd give in Copilot, and then to finalize our lesson, we would then talk about how to declare that you've used AI in your assessment. And we've given a basic format here. This is available in our library guides and our OER on using AI at university as well. And then we'd give an example of how you could say, yes, I've used AI in my assignment. We've suggested they include the prompts they've used and how they've used the output from those prompts as well. And that has been quite useful for just showing students how they can be transparent with their use of AI. And that brings me to the end of our demo of a class and using Copilot. Are there any questions there, or I can move on to Jane?
Lachlan's got a question in the chat there, Lorraine.
Yes. Oh, we're at the end with your references, could be at the end of the assessment. So there could be an acknowledgement section and then the reference section. Academic Skills also provide ways to reference Gen AI tools if they need to be referenced, but this is an acknowledgement of the use of an AI tool.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a fairly superficial thing, but it might be interesting to think maybe about a preferred strategy from maybe from, I guess, the teacher side or from the institution side where we want to see it. You know, potentially even in the comments when they're submitting an assignment, that initial comment section might be a spot for it. Just something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Be nice for it to be the same across all subjects to make it easier for the students. Okay, if there's no more questions on that, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand over to Jane.
Thank you, Lorraine. That was great. Hang on, just share my screen. Find my screen. All right. So, as Lorraine mentioned, there's a raft of, and back there are a raft of ethical considerations around using Gen AI, and none of these are unique to Gen AI in particular, but the list on the slide is in no particular order. Some will be more or less important depending on what you're doing. Anyway, I'm going to talk just about the copyright and licensing issues, and heads up that there are no definite legal answers yet, and students will need to learn to use their judgment in deciding what might be okay or not okay and what is fair. And I guess that's what we're here for, to help them with that. So there are a number of issues related with Gen AI related to copyright. Some of the concerns relate to both copyright and other considerations such as transparency and academic integrity and misinformation. The legal decisions and outcomes are still evolving. Meanwhile, I've got a few suggestions of how to manage some of the risks and use Gen AI fairly, the copyright risks, I mean. So first of all, the issue around training data. This one's probably caused the most media attention. You may be aware that OpenAI, Meta, and the mob are facing a bunch of lawsuits for scraping the web to train their generative AI models. Authors, artists, and musicians are justifiably indignant because their copyright has been infringed without any compensation or attribution. The Gen AI developers, largely based in the US, argue that the use counts as fair use under US copyright law. There are 4 factors considered by courts when deciding if something is fair use. If the purpose is commercial, is the use transformative? By transformative or non-expressive, they mean the works are simply ingested as data for probability algorithms. The intention is not direct market competition. Secondly, the nature of the work. Facts and raw data are not generally protected by copyright. Third, the amount of the work used. Plaintiffs need to prove a substantial amount of their work was copied for training, and given the lack of transparency and the enormous volume of data required, that can be difficult. Lastly, the effect on the potential market or value of the copyright material. So Tech argue that there's no market value for training data in support of licensing proposals. But during 2024, OpenAI and others began signing deals with large media companies and publishers for access to their material, which kind of contradicts the no market value argument. But on the side of AI developers, the reason copyright law has exceptions for fair use in the US or fair dealing in Australia is to achieve a balance between copyright owners' rights and the right of public access to information, knowledge, and creative works. Research and creative outputs and innovations are built on and inspired by earlier work. By making copyright too strict, we limit opportunities for innovation. Under Australian copyright law, fair dealing does not permit scraping from the internet, which then limits opportunity for development of a generative AI tech industry in Australia. So, regardless of balance, the lack of attribution is clear. With some of the models, there is little or no transparency with what is being used for training and no credit given to the creators. From a teaching and learning viewpoint, lack of attribution is a big issue. The risk of plagiarism affects research and academic integrity, citations and impact metrics may be influenced, and there's also the risk of AI misinterpreting material, giving false attribution, and spreading misinformation. I'm not sure the argument around the balance between the rights of users and copyright owners can ever be completely satisfactorily resolved. There are mega corporations and individuals on both sides of the arguments or coin. But my thoughts are that we should really emphasize to students that when they use AI as a tool for a summary or overview of a topic, they should never rely on it without checking the facts. And that kind of points back to what Lorraine said about references. Check they're not hallucinations. Use the library to learn to trace original sources and attribute them. And teaching students to find original sources is not really new. You wouldn't accept students citing from Wikipedia. It's a secondary source, but it's fine to use Wikipedia for an overview as a starting point. And just on the extra little addition that's not in my script, when Lorraine was saying use AI, check that the references are real. The other thing that comes up is check that the summary of that reference is true, because AI, some of the tools will actually create a summary, but it doesn't reflect the content of that particular paper. So whatever they do, they've got to go and read that paper. At least read the abstract, but preferably the whole thing. The next dilemma is copyright in generative AI outputs. Current legislation says that works that are not created by a human are not protected by copyright. So is it public domain with no copyright protection, or is it a derivative work of the materials used for training the AI? If it's a derivative, does the company who owns the generative AI model own the output? Does the programmer who wrote the AI model own the output? What about the people who compiled the database for training the model? It all sounds a bit silly, but these are questions raised by the UK legislation, which grants copyright to works generated by a computer. Then what about a user who inputs a series of iterative prompts to manipulate the output? Some visual artists are doing amazing things with AI image generation, but they haven't been able to claim copyright. The US Copyright Office released a report at the end of January this year upholding that human authorship is required for copyright protection, but also acknowledging that artists can use AI as an assistive tool. What happens if a business uses AI to generate designs? It's unclear what IP protection a business will have if they use AI for product designs or marketing materials and a competitor copies their design. So I like this advice from a legal news article. If claiming and enforcing copyright is important to you, create the work yourself. If you do use AI tools, keep clear and very detailed records of your process so that the amount of human involvement can be assessed. And I guess that applies to assignments as well. To provide clarity for users downstream, I would also consider putting a Creative Commons public domain dedication on material that is more AI than human. However, you do need to be careful that the output is not infringing. If an AI tool generates material that is a copy or substantially similar to another work, it may be infringing the copyright on the original. Liability is unclear, but if you publish it, there's a risk of being held liable for infringement. Even if copyright is not infringed because it's not a reproduction or exact reproduction of copyrighted content, plagiarism and lack of attribution is an obvious issue, especially from an academic viewpoint. Avoid using generative AI to produce output in someone's style, or at least don't publish that output if you do. If AI produces something really useful, find out where the info comes from and cite it appropriately. Avoid using recognizable characters or recognizable text extracts. Copyright infringement of outputs may be relatively easy to recognize. However, a related issue is the potential loss of market share where generative AI is used instead of original material. For example, musicians earn royalties from Spotify. So if a business decides to just play AI-generated background music instead of purchasing a license from Spotify, human musicians lose some of the market share. Photographers contribute to stock libraries and some earn royalties or license fees. So when we generate images with AI, instead of using one from a free stock library, we may be impacting the market. My personal opinion about ethical use is if you need a decorative image or something that is easily obtained, find one with a human creator rather than using AI. It's fine to use AI if you need a picture of a turtle flying over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but for everyday pictures, music and video, let's try not. At least until issues around licensing or AI training are resolved. Again, this is my gut feeling and personal opinion, but it kind of illustrates what I said about teaching the students to assess and use their judgment. Lastly, restrictions apply on what you can upload into an AI tool depending on the material. For example, when uploading a research article to generate a summary, you need to pay attention to the terms of use of the AI tool. If the prompts and uploads you contribute are used for training or saved by the tool, then it's best to avoid uploading third-party material without a license or permission. Copilot, used under the University Enterprise License, is supposed to not save the data, so it's okay to use for that. Some subscription agreements explicitly limit or restrict use with generative AI tools, so please check before uploading material from library ebooks or journals. And our subscriptions team hope to be publishing some more guidance on that later in the year. It takes a while to work through the agreements. With works in the public domain, copyright doesn't apply, so material can generally be uploaded freely, provided other considerations such as privacy and ICIP do not apply. Works with Creative Commons licenses might be okay, but if ingested for training and then part of an output, attribution becomes a problem. Restrictions also depend on how you plan to use the outputs. If you're only using the tool to help find similar material or generate summaries for personal use, then there is less concern. If you intend to publish or share outputs, then you must check the license conditions and potentially get permission from the copyright owners and check that it's not plagiarizing. So finally, to wrap up, here's a summary of my thoughts and advice for discussion. It's hard not to have AI help when you're doing anything online, but evaluate your sources, track down the origins of information, and always attribute. Be careful of infringing copyright or plagiarizing when using material generated with AI, particularly if sharing it outside of the university network. Consider the ethics around using generative AI when free or affordable alternatives are easily available. And don't upload licensed or subscribed content into AI tools without checking if the tool retains a copy for training. And I guess all of these can be discussion points with students, and there will be varying circumstances. But that is a wrap from me, and I'm going to hand over to Beck to kind of finish off, but I'll keep sharing the slide. Well, I'll go on to that one.
Thanks, Jane. There is one question in the chat there from Daniel. Can you see the chat? Oh, I can read it out. What about a student uploading a series of lecture slides and asking for a summary study guide? Would this breach copyright, particularly if they're not using Copilot, the enterprise version?
If they are not using Copilot and they do that, they'll be breaching the university's copyright effectively, because they would be, the university owns this lecture material and the slides. Potentially, if there's anything in that lecture material that is used under the statutory education license, so you know how we can provide readings and stuff to students through the Stat Ed license, that has to be within the university network. So if that gets uploaded outside of the network, then, and it gets absorbed for training, then yes, we are potentially infringing. I mean, you know, the chances of getting caught are probably like next to zero, but it's still, you know, it's you've got to decide whether you think that's okay to do or not okay to do. Definitely, if you actually went and deliberately published the output of that, then your chances of getting caught escalate dramatically. So lecture material, if you want to do summaries, I would use Copilot is my short answer, but yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the things you need to really teach students, is that what happens with the data that they input into the tools. And it's different depending on the tool that they're using. So Copilot's not storing that information for training, and there are features of other tools like ChatGPT where you can turn that function off. So that's something that we do really try to teach. Thanks, Jane, and thanks, Lorraine. Amazing, really good info there. So we're just on the last slide there. And there's just links there to some of those resources we discussed today, and to some further reading as well. I'll point out that the University of Sydney creates some really, really great content, and they have an AI for Educators module that is worth having a look at if you want to learn more. And there's a link to some further information about copyright there too. Sorry, Jane.
No, I was just, there's another comment from Lachlan saying, unless you put it in a declaration, for example. So I just wanted to respond to that. So Lachlan, are you suggesting that if you put a declaration in when you upload university material into AI, then that is okay?
No, I was actually probably making more of a tongue-in-cheek comment about getting caught if I put it,
yes,
if I put it into the declaration. It's like, yeah, I've been using it.
Yeah, I didn't see when the timing. Yeah, again, declaring or referencing doesn't avoid infringing copyright. Two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks, Jane. And we've got links to our contact details there as well. So if you've got any questions at all, please reach out. All of our faculty librarians, Jane, Lorraine, and myself, we're all happy to answer questions anytime. Did anybody have any questions before we finish up? And this is a developing space, and we will keep developing resources in line with university guidelines as well, to ensure that our students can develop the appropriate skills they need to succeed at university with academic integrity and ethically.
Thank you so much, Beck and Jane and Lorraine. I think that was excellent, interesting, and as you said, just the start of the conversation, and it's really been fantastic to see some proposed kind of approaches as well. You're going to get more and more requests for those, because people are quite often unsure where to begin with this or how it might be used in their own context. And whilst they can sort of spend a bunch of time thinking about it, potentially seeing ways that it's being used successfully and otherwise is going to be arguably one of the best ways for people to start their own process as well. So I really appreciate that. And I think I speak for everybody in the room when I say we really appreciate the session this morning and look forward to more. So thank you again. And as I said at the beginning of the session, we do add the recordings and all of the artifacts from the PD sessions, so the slides, etc., into the Teaching Academy Teams channel, the event list that's in there, which people probably use to sign up for today, etc. give me about half an hour and then it will all be in there as well. So thanks again, and we will see you all at the next event. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Lachlan.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.